Good morning everyone, and welcome to this wonderful Sunday morning. I hope everyone is doing well and is staying safe and healthy. Hopefully. We're obviously praying for all those who are going through difficult times at the moment, those who are suffering because of the virus, those who are mourning because of those that have lost through the virus, and of course everyone else who are having serious issues at this time. Hope you can join me in my reading this morning. It's only a short one. It's from John's Gospel, and it's John chapter 16 verses 31 and 32. Again, I remind you that I'm using the New King James Version, so if you are following along at home. So John 16 verses 31 to 32. Jesus answered them, "Do you now believe? Indeed, the hour is coming, yes, has now come, that you will be scattered, each to his own, and will leave me alone. And yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me." May the Lord bless the reading of his word. Many years ago, I read the Courtney series of novels by Wilbur Smith. Started off on the Sean Courtney trilogy, When the Lion Feeds, The Sound of Thunder, and A Sparrow Falls. And I fell in love, in some respects, with probably a much romanticised idea of the African wilderness and South Africa. The trilogy itself was set between the 1860s and the 1920s. And through all that period, you have the Zulu War, the Gold Rush, the Boer War, the First World War, and a different lifestyle from a different era. and at the time it very much made me fall in love with the description of the countryside. But all those events, those books are very dramatic and very much a case of full of drama. There is one part of the first book, When the Lion Feeds, that I found more terrifying and more dramatic than any other part of the book. And that is when the main character, Sean Courtney, gets trapped beneath a minecart when there is a cave-in in his gold mine. He is stuck utterly alone, trapped in this metal container under tons of rock. And it's terrifying because of the emotions of that idea of being isolated and trapped and completely alone. And loneliness, I've found, is something that many of us are struggling with at the moment, with the isolation, with everything else that's going on. After so many weeks of social distancing, we are beginning to feel that, many people out there. And it might not be the same as the loneliness that Sean felt in that scene that I've just mentioned, but there is a pang of loneliness, a pang of being alone, and the solitude that is coming from what we are going through as a nation. So today I want to have an interesting look at the loneliness, especially in relationship to the passage that I've just read. And we've got to ask, are we truly alone? What does it mean about solitude? Now, there can be two kinds of solitude. The first is consisting of isolation in space and being away from everyone. The other is isolation of spirit. The first is simply separation by distance, when we are seen, touched, heard by no one, and we're said to be alone. And all hearts respond to the truth of that saying. This is not solitude. On the other hand, there is the loneliness of the soul. There are times when hands touch ours, but only send an icy chill of unsympathizing indifference to our heart. When eyes gaze into ours, but the glazed look which cannot read into the bottom of our soul. When words pass from our lips, but only come back as echo reverberation without replying, for a dreary solitude. When the multitude throng can press onto us, and we cannot say, as Christ said, somebody touched me. For the contact may have been physical, but there's no real connection. And there's two types of people who feel this loneliness of the soul, this solitude, in different ways. The first is the self-reliant, self-dependent, who will ask for no help. They do not want it, nor will they take it. Who act and resolve alone, who can sternly, through duty, and do it hard-headedly, let what will be, be. Such people obviously command respect, for whoever respects himself wants to be reverenced by others. They are invaluable as well in all those professions in life which need that sort of self-dependence. But is it just a weakness? Jacob, if you read the Old Testament, was alone when he slept on his way to Pandan Aram, the first night that which he was away from his father's roof, with the world before him and all old associations broken up. And Elijah was alone in the wilderness when the court had deserted him. And he said, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I am left alone, and they seek to take my life. But the loneliness of Jacob and the loneliness of Elijah are two very different things. To Jacob, what he yearned for was realized in the form of a simple dream. A ladder raised up in the form, ladder raised from earth to heaven, figured the possibility of communion between the spirit of man and the spirit of God. In Elijah's case, the storm, the earthquake, the fire, they did all the work in his soul before a still small voice told him that he was not alone. In such a way, the tense sense of weakness comes with agony, and that dreadful feeling of being alone, all alone, painfully constricts your heart and being when you feel alone. And yet, it was that they both learned in an invaluable lesson that the Father was with them, and they were not alone in a place when they needed to know that they were not alone. The Lord showed them he was near. Perhaps while the earliest desert fathers took themselves into the desert to learn such things in quiet contemplation. There is, of course, another type, those who tremble at the thought of being alone, not from lack of courage nor from weakness of intellect, but they depend upon others from the intensity of the feelings that they can't be alone. They need others around them. They don't really want aid, they just want company. And if we look more closely at this second type, we start to understand what is meant in the reading we have today. The deep humanity of Jesus was given deep sympathy for others and a deep understanding of our feelings. He not only gave sympathy, but wanted it too from others. He selected John to be his friend, who found solace in female company, attended to by the women who ministered to him out of their substance, who in the trial hour could not bear even to pray without the human presence, which is the pledge and reminder of God's presence, had nothing in him of the hard, merely self-dependent character. Even this verse testifies to that same fact. A stern spirit never could have said, "I am not alone because my Father is with me." Never would have felt the loneliness which needed the balanced truth. These words tell of a struggle, an inward reasoning, a difficulty and a reply, a sense of solitude. I shall be alone. And an immediate correction of that. No, not alone. The Father is with me. And there is a thought connected with the life of Christ, more touching. None that seems so peculiar to characterize him than the solitude in which he lived. Those who understood him only half understood him. Those who knew him best scarcely could be said to know him. On this occasion, the disciples thought, "Now we do understand, now we believe." The lonely spirit answered, "Do you now believe? Behold, the hour cometh that you shall be scattered, every man to his own, and shall leave me alone." Very impressive is that trait in history. He was in this world alone. The loneliness of Christ was caused by the very fact that he was fully God and fully man. Being fully God served him, and this made him realize the human nature even more. There is a second-rate greatness which the world can comprehend. If we take two men who are brought into direct contrast by Christ himself, then the other type of human, the other that of divine, the Son of Man, and John the Baptist, you see the difference between these two, and this becomes very clear. John's life had a certain rugged goodness on which was written spiritual excellence. The world on the whole accepted him. Pharisees and Sadducees went to his baptism. The people idolized him as a prophet. And now, if he hadn't chance to cross the path of a weak prince and a vengeful woman, we can see no reason why John might have not finished his course with joy, recognized as irreproachable. If we were to ask the question, why is it that the world accepted John the Baptist and rejected Christ, one answer is that it appears that the one life was one of very simple and one-sidedness, and the other very complex. If we look at the nature, there is a uniform pattern to all living beings. All animals have organs performing the same task, a brain, a heart and lungs. That's relatively simple. But when it comes to the study, the complex anatomy of a man, that's a completely different story. It's not difficult to master the constitution of a single country. But when you try to understand the whole entire universe, you find appearances of contradiction, law opposed by law, motion balanced by motion, happiness blended with misery. The structure of a man is to the structure of a limpet that which the universe is to a single country. And the complex and boundless soul of Christ was to the souls of other men. Therefore, to the casual observer, his life was a mass of inconsequences and contradictions. Everyone wants to point out the discrepancies. The Pharisees could not comprehend how a holy teacher could eat with sinners. His own friends and disciples could not work out his ability to speak in public and be so public, which the privacy which he aimed to keep as well. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Some thought he was a good man. Others said, no, he is a deceiver of the people. And hence it was that he lived to see all that acceptance which had marked him and marked the earlier stage of his career. First the Pharisees took alarm, then the Sadducees, then the political parties of the Herodians, then the people. But when the cry of brute force is stirred from the depths of society, as deaf to the voice of reason, and the ocean is strength churned into raging foam by the winds, as one commentator puts it. The apostles at every step of the way, at all the events, feared and indeed lost heart. One denied him, another betrayed him, all deserted him. They were scattered, each to their own. And the truth was that Jesus was left alone in Pilate's judgment hall. There is here a very important distinction. To feel solitary is common. We all feel it at time to time, especially right now. To complain of being alone without understanding is genuinely enough. In every place, in every family, you might find someone who wishes to put a parallel between their own feelings and that of Jesus. because you might feel that you met with no response, you are passed by, find yourself unpopular, no one speaks to you. Well, is that because you are above the world, nobler, diversing and executing grand plans which they cannot comprehend, vindicating the wrong, proclaiming and living on great principles, offering it by the saintliness of your purity and the unworldliness of your aspirations? That was the loneliness of Christ, the separation he had from the world. Or is it more likely that we are wrapped up in self, cold, unhelpful sentiment, indifference about the welfare of others, and very much astonished that you are not deeply interested and no one is really interested in you? You must not use these words of Christ, they have nothing to do with you. But we can have the idea of loneliness and someone that understands it in Christ Jesus. And there is more than one occasion where Jesus felt loneliness. The first time was when he was 12. His parents found him in the temple, hearing the doctors and asking the questions. He was asking questions and they were astonished. There is a moment in everyone's life, and sometimes it's very early on, where the old routine of daily and duty is not enough, when the parental bar seems too low, because what we long for is far more and that we feel held back. Normally called teenage rebellion. And what is meant for Jesus was that he felt his heavenly Father's calling over that of his earthly father, Joseph. And that is a lonely, lonely moment when the young soul first feels God. When this earth is recognized as a how dreadful is this place. This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gates of heaven. When the Jacob's ladder is seen planted against the skies, and we wake and the dream haunts us, with a twist in reality. You might see it coming when curiosity strikes. Rightly looked at, the opinionist is actually anguish, the fearful solitude of feeling all the insecurity of all that is human, discovery that life is real and many forms of social and religious existence hollow. We start questioning, we start wondering, there's got to be more than this. Because in that moment you feel the solitude. What they thought was all they knew has changed. Certain beliefs are not right. It is light rock that they thought they stood on has become sand and washed away. But Jesus, he went to where he knew he was anchored. And he utters the lonely words to Mary and Joseph, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" That solitude was felt by Christ in trial. When he was alone in the desert, being tempted by the enemy. When he was in Pilate's judgment hall. When he was in the garden, he was alone. The individuality each of us has means that we have to face things alone. Each one of us as we start the path of life's way are untried, with boundless possibilities before us. No one can predict what we might face, what challenges we might have, what job we will do, and what responsibilities we will have to face. Everyone has their own particular rules and must take up their life plan alone and persevere in it in perfect privacy, with no one meddling in it. Everyone's temptations are made up a host of different things, internal and external, which no one else could possibly understand. You are tried alone. Alone you must bear and conquer. Alone you must be sifted by the world. There are moments known only to one's own self, when we sit and ponder, yearning for tomorrows which shall free us from the strife of today. And there are trials more terrible than that, because we all have that moment where good conflicts with good, when we can't decide which way is better. But it is when obedience to God is put against disobedience to those who love us, in our parents, or loyalty to one another, can be only kept by disloyalty to some other. Or if friendly advice is really not quite right, and we have that moment of "get thee behind me, Satan." And when human advice is unavailable, then we feel to be alone. Once more, Jesus was alone in dying. The hour had come. They were all gone, and he was, as he predicted, left alone. The old saying, you know who your friends are? I am alone, yet not alone. There is a feeble and sentimental way in which some might speak of Jesus. Man of Sorrows was his name, and we turn to the cross and the agony and the loneliness to touch the softer feelings. And you may feel compassion, but in doing so, you're actually downgrading Jesus' loneliness by your compassion. Compassion for him. Adore him if you will, respect and have reverence for him, but no pity. Tender sympathy seems out of place, for even in human things, the strength that is in a man can be only learnt when he is thrown upon his own resources and left alone. What a man can do in conjunction with others does not test the man. Tell us what he can do alone. It is one thing to defend the truth when you know that your audience are already made up in their mind, and every argument will meet with a willing response. And another thing to hold up the truth that must be supported if you are in it alone. It's one thing to rush into danger with the strength and the shouts of numbers behind you. It's another to be the captain that is left on the ship, watching all the lifeboats go away. Such and great was the strength and the majesty of the Saviour's solitude. It was not the trial of a lonely hermit. There was a certain gentle and pleasing melancholy in the life which he lived alone. But the solitude of Christ was the solitude of a crowd. In him was the thought which was to be the start of the world's life, a thought unshared, misunderstood, and rejected. Can you not feel the power of those words when the man reposing and strength felt the last shadow of perfect isolation pass across his soul? My God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then we have the words of self-reliance. You will leave me alone. Alone. Then Jesus was contented to be. He threw himself at his own solitude, at his own solitary thought. Did not go down to meet the world, but waited, though it might be ages till the world should come around to him. He appealed to the future and not aimed at seemingly consistent. He left his contradictions unexplained. I came from the Father, I leave this world and go to the Father. This is self-reliance, to respond calmly, to live, to believe that what is truest in your true form, to live by that. To not be over anxious, to be heard or understood or sympathized with, certain that at last all must acknowledge the same, and that while you stand firm, the world will come around to you. That is independence. It is not difficult to get away in retirement and there live upon your own convictions, nor is it difficult to mix with men and follow their convictions, but to enter into a world and there live out firmly and fiercely according to your own consciousness. That is Christian greatness. God's work cannot be done with the spirit of independence. You have got some way in the Christian life when you learn to say humbly and yet majestically, I dare to be alone. Remark the humility and the loneliness Jesus had. If he had simply said, I can be alone, he would have said no more than any proud, self-relying man could say. But when he added those words, because the Father is with me, that independence assumed another character. That self-reliance became only another form of reliance upon God. Distinguish between gentle humility, there is false humility, which says, it's all in my head. I must not trust it. I must distrust my own reason and judgment because they are my own. I must not accept the dictates of my own conscience, for it is not my own, and is not trust in self, the great fault of our fallen nature. There is a spirit which bears witness with our spirit. There is a God who is not far from any one of us. There is a light which lights every man who comes into the world. Do not be unnaturally humble. The thought of your mind is maybe, just maybe, the thought of God. To refuse to follow that may be to disown God. To take the judgment and the conscience of other men to live by, where is the humility of that? From where did their consciousness and judgment come? If they refuse, like you, to rely on their own conscience and you rely upon it, how are you sure that this is more the mind of God which you have refused to hear? Look at it another way. The charm of the world of great men is this, that you recognize them as wisdom which has passed across your own mind. You feel that you are your own thoughts, else you would not at once admit them. Yes, God spoke to you. What did you learn? Only they believe it, said it, trusted the world within them, and you did not. Be sure that often when you say, it's only in my head and I am alone, the real correcting thought is this: alone, but the Father is with me. Therefore I can live that lonely conviction. There is no danger in this. Whatever you may think, no danger of mistake if your character be true, for we are not left in uncertainty in this matter. Samuel could distinguish between the impulse, quite a human one, which would have made him select Eliab out of Jesse's sons, and the deeper judgment by which the Lord said, do not concern his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. Doubtless deep truth of character is required for this, for the whispering voices get mixed together, and we dare not trust by our own thoughts because we think them our own and not God's. And this because we only now and then try to seek him earnestly. It's only given to us when we form the habit of listening to know the difference. He knew it, because all his blessed lifelong he could say, my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of him that sent me. Let life be life of faith. Do not go about inquiring what others think, what others believe, and what others say. It seems the easiest, but it is in fact the most difficult. Believe in God. God is near you. Throw yourself fearlessly upon him. There is an unknown might within you which will wake when you command it. The day may come when all that is will fall off from you as they did from him. Let his strength be yours, the independentness of him come to you, so that you can say, I am alone, but the Father is with me. Look to him and he will save you. Amen. God bless you all. I hope that you have a wonderful week, a wonderful day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless you all. Amen.